What's up, urban molesters? Today we'll be discussing a Gnostic perspective on the parable of Minas, um, particularly the Sethian Gnostic perspective. Now, there's a few key things that we need to understand. Like, for example, what is Sethian Gnosticism? What is the parable of Minas? Is there another like it in the Bible, in the New Testament Bible? Where does it show up? What's the history behind it? And yeah, let's get right into it. So, anyways, Sethian Gnosticism is the Gnostic idea that you might hear a lot in the media and on the internet, on whatever, which has pretty basic understanding of um, Seth, which is Adam and Eve's third son, being the pure son essentially, and that we're descendants of him because he has the spark of light. And another few key things is that like the God of the Old Testament, which is like an overarching Gnostic perspective, which is that the God of the Old Testament is actually an evil God, um, which is known as Yaldabaoth, and that it's not a true God, and that we're in a material plane, not because it's a sort of test, but because this is the best that this blind, disabled God can essentially make, and that we need to return to the source, to the monad, which is a sort of Neoplatonist idea, which then again, modern Christianity has a lot of inspirations from Neoplatonist ideas. I know that there's like this idea of Christianity being a philosophy in of itself, but there's a lot of trading between old world or an antique world ideas. And another question that I have would be like the parable of Minas, right? So what happens in it would be sorry. So the parable of 10 Minas is first appears in Luke 19:11, um, where that wannabe king, where that a wannabe king shows up. He's like, "Hey, listen to all his servants. I'm gonna go to this place, and you people, my servants, better do something with the money that I'm gonna give." So he gives each of his servants one minas, right? Or no, he gives them each 10 minas. And the first servant, he gives him. No, he returns after like two days, or no, he returns after like 2 weeks or something. And he's like, "Yo, listen, what did you do with my minas?" And he's like, "Yo, listen, I multiplied it, and now I have 10 minas extra. That's cool, dude. You can earn, or you can take control of 10 cities." Next servant, what did you do? I made 5 minas. Okay, you can take control of 5 cities. And then there was one servant that had control of 10 minas, just like everyone else, but he didn't do anything with it. Rather, he kept it safe so that when his master would return, he would have it for sure, right? And what his master would do with him is he threw him out to his enemies, and yeah, his fate was sealed by them. So in some translations, it's phrased in a way where that it sounds like, oh, this servant was supposed to kill his enemies, and in some other translations, it's more like, oh, he's left him to die so that he can be killed, right? Um, but yeah, the parable of Minas isn't the only of its kind. Um, Earlier on in the Bible, in the New Testament Bible, we have Matthew 25:14, which is about the 10 talents, which is essentially the same thing, but there's some like key difference. But this time it's like a rich merchant, and the fate of the servant is also different. Um, a talent isn't like a literal talent, whereas in, oh, I'm so good at jelking my massive schlong, obviously. A talent was like 20 years a wage, essentially. And a mina was 3 months' wage, so definitely not a small sum. Um, but the fate of the servant with the guy that didn't do anything is essentially the same. Now, who did Jesus tell this to? He said this right before he died. Duh. Um, and it was like on an olive tree, if I'm not wrong, or it was on an olive field on a mountain. First time to a bunch of so the parable of Minas was first explained to a bunch of um, Jewish scholars, and then it was next told to a bunch of normal people, right? And I think that change, and this is, if you look at Christian history, this change of Minas and talents does change the message as well. But the reason why it changed is also because of bad translations, maybe, or of bad localization. Uh, Now, why do I want to bring a Gnostic perspective to this? Now, I'm gonna go with like the idea of um, the disciples of Jesus didn't truly understand his messages, right? So there's a bunch of debates on the parable of 10 talents and what it truly means, right? Because oh my God, this servant, why did he get killed, right? Why did he essentially get killed by someone who's meant to be by an authority figure, right? And the reason why most people come to is, well, he didn't do anything with the money that he was offered, right? So he didn't do anything with the trust that was placed in him. He didn't multiply, which is what God tells you to do in the Old Testament, which is to be fruitful and multiply. But here's another thing, right? Judas, and I believe also Mary Magdalene, um, in some Gnostic sects or in some Gnostic texts, they are said to be the ones that truly understood Jesus' teachings, whilst the other disciples, whilst they might have understood a shallow depth of it, they didn't truly understand what Jesus meant. So really, I'm going off a whim here, and the parable of 10 talents and the parable of 10 minas is probably the same thing. So let's just say, well, let's treat them as separate for this occasion, okay? Now, the parable of 10 minas. What someone is a wannabe king, so he didn't truly become king yet, okay? But he's going on a tangent here. Who is this? Who is this wannabe king? I'd say this is probably Yaldabaoth himself, or this is probably the one that wants to take over. Take over whatever material realm this is. Then we have the servants. Servants would be you, would be I. You don't really have a choice if you're a servant or not. If you're in this world, you're a servant of God, right? If you're in this world, you're definitely a servant of God or the Old Testament God or whatever. You don't have a choice. Only thing you can do is maybe like disobey him by not believing in him, right? But you'd still be a hired servant in this case. So what else? Now, another funny thing is that Jesus constantly tells you to throw away your material possessions and this money is being given to his servants. So he's not really. I'd say this point isn't really made with consistency, and most people seem to ignore that because it's not convenient to their lives. So the fate of the servant, which I find interesting, is the fate of the servant is something interesting because why? Why would he be left to die, right? Why he would be separated from his master, which in this case would be hell, or what most people consider hell, which isn't the Hollywood kind of hell with like burning fire, lake of fire. I'm sure there might be some descriptions of it, but really it's just a separation from God. Or it's a redo, right? It's like realistically, what's the servant gonna do? He's gonna go look for another master, which is what you're gonna do if you die, according to Gnostic perspective. You're gonna go into a light tunnel to get your Lelouch harvested. This isn't like a schizo rant, by the way. Uh, it's not a schizo rant. I'm telling you this right now. The parable of 10 talents. Okay. Now, you're a merchant. What's the difference between a king and a merchant? Well, in that time, the difference was huge. Same thing now, except some merchants are bigger than kings. I'd say that the amount is also important because let's say a talent, right? It's 20 years. 20 years worth of wage. If you manage to make seven, or no, wait, what was it again? 520. If you manage to make 5 talents, you've lived to 100. Essentially. If you make 2, that's like 40 years old. So this is another part of symbolism, right? Where the length of your life determines how you're treated by God, by Yaldabaoth, by the archons, whilst a pure being wouldn't measure it, right? Now, a lot of Christians are going to use the debate that God isn't a temporal being, meaning that he's outside of time. But to that I have to say, honestly, no, because while in Christian narrative, God is outside of time, there are moments in the Bible where that God's patience is tested, right? And why would you have patience if you're not a temporal being? This might sound like I'm crazy, but yeah, I hope you understand my video. So anyways, this is the Gnostic perspective. You can skip to this part. Basically, what I believe is that the master is meant to be an archon. The servant that didn't do anything is a is a person trying to do their best but was misled. He's going to look for another servant, which would be a pure monad, which is going to be the monad. The people that live to 100 to a 40 in the name of whatever being they believe in is going to keep them chained to whatever system they're in. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy.